All right, well, Brett Mason, thank you for joining MolksTVTalk.
Good to talk to you finally in the flesh.
That's right, and there's so much flesh too. It's quite an experience. Mason, you've been working with 10 for, well, it seems like forever now, but certainly your entire professional career?
It was at 9 for a few years before that, so about...
We won't talk about that.
the early years.
Yeah.
That's great, so probably about 5 or 6 years at 10 now.
Yes. And so how did you get into journalism just to start with? Because it's not... you're a young bloke, but it's not just a case of knocking on the door and turning up one day and here's a notepad, nick off and go and get a story.
No, well, I grew up in country New South Wales, so a really small town, and always wanted to be a journo. Sat there and watched 60 Minutes and all those shows, and just sort of dreamed of going out and seeing the world and witnessing all these amazing events and history unfolding and all those sorts of cliches, but never really sort of thought I would. But I went to the local newspaper one day and went in and introduced myself and said I wanted to be a journo, and they're all very friendly and gave me a job as a paper boy. I was in primary school, so my first job was delivering the Bay Post on my push bike before school, and
nice.
I loved it. And then one day I went out and found a story. This protest with the local council, went down, took my camera down and took some photos and wrote a story, and went in and pitched to the editor, and went back when we went to print on the Thursday, and it was on the front page, and
Excellent.
I just loved it. And then did that for a couple of years. So I was still at high school. So I started in year 10, which was back in 2000. And did my cadetship while I was still at school. So
awesome.
Racing out, taking photos at lunchtime, and running back after school and writing up everything from the star signs to sport and the TV guide, and then went to uni and ended up where I am, and just love it. It's been fantastic. I've worked all over Queensland and just loved meeting people and all the stories that I've got to tell, and London is just fantastic. I mean, I wake up every morning there and pinch myself. I can't believe I pick up the Daily Mail every morning and read through and drive past the Palace on the way to the office, and it's just amazing. I love it. I feel very lucky to have the job that I do. Well,
it must be a long way from the year 10 kid filing stories for the local paper to, waking up and going into the studio, into the facilities that you share in London. How did that come about for you? How did you get that opportunity?
Well, it had always been a goal of mine as a kid. That's what I wanted to. I wanted to be in London. I wanted to be in Europe telling all those yarns. And then when I was at 10, we opened up our bureau. Remember when everyone shut their bureaus down except for the ABC? And 10 was the one that sort of opened their office up again, and then 9 followed suit, and Danny Isdale was our first Europe correspondent for many years. Mark Sulo in Queensland was the last bloke they've had over there, and so that was my goal very early on, that I wanted to do it. And thank you. Good coffee, I've missed it.
Line up.
So I just wanted to do it, and the only other single person office, see, London, it's just me, so I work on my own every day, and the only other 10 bureau that's a one-man band is in North Queensland. So I went up there, and it was great because I loved it. Loved the stories, I loved the travel, I loved living there, but it was also a good way for me to see whether I could do it. Newsrooms are an amazing place, and you walk in and it's a team, and that's what I love about it. And when you're on your own, it's different because you don't have that face-to-face contact, you don't have that camaraderie, and it can be hard when you have a tough day, or when you're up against it, not to have a cameraman there or an editor there to sort of let off steam with, or talk about, or help each other. So it was good for me to kind of go up there and prove to myself that I could do it, and then when I went in for the interview, I could say honestly that I knew what it was like, and that I could do it.
So in that sort of, just to get technical for a second, they tend to have a bureau over in the UK and Europe, but the shared facility that you rent a desk space or something?
Well, we have a bureau, fully equipped bureau at ITV. So ITV is a big broadcaster for those that don't know. So it's a really well-resourced national broadcaster. We're based in their newsroom. So that's fantastic. We have access to the UK's leading free-to-air commercial newsroom, their resources, their staff.
Shabby.
It's a pretty fancy office. It's no Mount Cootha, that's for sure. That's for sure. Although I miss Mount Cootha a lot, but it's it's amazing. And I walk in there, but it's literally me. So every day I'll go out and film my own stories most of the time. I edit all my own stories. So I'm shooting it probably about, I reckon, 90% of the stories you see on the news each night. I'm shooting them myself. We've got 2 good cameramen we use over there. Sean Boyd, who is our senior cameraman in Sydney, he's now moved over. So I shoot a lot of stories with him every couple of weeks, and also Nick Smith, who's from Queensland. He was at 9, we used to work together there. And he's just done a stint in Iraq shooting for CNN. So there's lots of Aussie freelancers and lots of Queenslanders. So you have that interaction. But day to day, I run my own show, which is great. It's challenging, but a lot of fun as well to sort of, run your own show and decide what you want to do and how you want to go about it.
Do you find that the Aussie accent opens the door for you more often than not overseas?
Yeah, definitely. I think most people in Europe love Australia. They're intrigued by us, and we've got a good sense of humour. So I think they like that. And on my first day, I got there in December last year, so just as we were losing the Ashes, and I arrived to a newsroom of Poms who love their cricket, who just gave it to me straight. They still do, and it's good fun because I give it back, and it's great. But everywhere I've been in the world, people say, "Where are you from?" You say Australia, and they go out of their way to show you their country and tell you their story. And I made some great friends in Libya who just couldn't believe that Australians cared enough to have some news teams there covering the uprising. And I was in Malawi in Africa probably about a month ago shooting a story there. And Gavi, the Global Alliance for Vaccines and Immunisations, took a big donation from Australia to vaccinate this community. So we went out into this remote community and I was interviewing this woman whose son had been immunised, the first in their country to be immunised. And I said to her, what do you say to Australia for helping with this money? And she didn't know what Australia was. And so that's an example, I guess, where being Australian didn't particularly help. But I think day to day most people love the Aussies, and I think our sense of humour is what really helps out. We sort of don't take ourselves too seriously, and we love a chat too, so we're always happy to talk to people.
Well, look, I guess you've landed in the European Bureau at a pretty plum time too. I mean, it's not to put too fine a point on it, you've kind of got the Olympics on your back doorstep later this year. There's all sorts of things happening around, no doubt, with the fact that the Queen's Jubilee is this year and all of the events that will occur through and about that. Is there anything particularly that you're looking forward to covering?
Well, the Jubilee is going to be amazing. The Queen on a barge, going down the Thames, 1,000 boats behind her, people cheering. It's going to be amazing. I mean, and of course the Olympics. I mean, we're so geared up for that at 10. Everyone's really excited about it, and counting down the days. Just ticked over 6 months, and the venues are coming along, and I'm out there all the time doing stories. All the test events are going on. The diving this week, the swimming next week, gymnastics a few weeks ago. So it's really buzzing. But I think it's just going to be a great year. Last year was a big year for me in Africa and the Middle East with all the uprisings. We had a lot of travel through Europe. There seem to be so many stories breaking outside of London, which we've never really had in the last few years. I mean, in the 3 years that Danielle was there before me, there was lots of travel through Europe, but we've never really had correspondents going into Libya, into Egypt, into Tunisia. Those are sort of countries that Australians haven't seen a lot of. So it was a challenging year for us in that regard. But I think this year is going to be a really big London year. We're going to see the Jubilee and all those events and concerts. The Olympics is going to be a huge event, and then there's a torch relay, all those events around that. So I think it's going to be a really good chance for me to tell London stories, because I haven't really told many London stories. I've told lots of Europe stories and lots of African stories, or North African stories, but not a lot of London stories. And I haven't seen a lot of London. I live there, but I haven't done a lot of the touristy things that most Australians when they go over there do. So I'm kind of looking forward to going and doing all those things as well, which is really good.
It's awesome. I guess it's interesting, because we, being Australian, having a connection with the UK, there's lots of romanticism, and there's enough people around in Australia that we can go, oh, such and such knows this person, or I remember the time when blah, 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 and we can hear a lot of that. But to get that opportunity as an Aussie to go to the old Dart and live there and trip over the entire Australian contingent that would be there, I'm sure would be a little bit comforting, because stranger in a strange land stuff, but to have that to fall back on. Do you connect with many other Aussies there?
Yeah, well, I mean, and also there's lots of other Aussie journos there as well. So Pete from 9 and his cameraman James, I've worked with both of those guys before. The ABC has an amazing team. Cam Bauer, their cameraman, used to work at 10. Phil Williams, Emma Alberici, Rachel Brown. They're all good Australian journos who we've all sort of worked together previously or have gotten to know each other really well. But you see Australians everywhere. I mean, you go to the supermarket, you bump into an Aussie. You go to the pub, you meet an Australian. So it's a lot like home, but it's professionally it's very different. The way that we do our jobs in London is a lot different. When you ring up and say you're from Channel 10, people don't know what that means, or they don't understand who you are and where you're working and the kind of program. And they love their paperwork. They love their forms in the UK. So you want to go and film a story about public transport, and you wait a few weeks until all the forms are signed and stamped and dated and sent back. So it's a little bit frustrating, and things happen a little bit slower than what I'm used to. But there's Aussies everywhere, and it's nice, I guess. It feels a lot like home sometimes.
Have you faked your way in anywhere?
No, never do that.
Never?
No, haven't had to.
That's good. Well, just you mentioned, because that's exactly it. There's not a whole bunch of people in the UK that would know who Network 10 is necessarily.
No.
But as opposed to, I'm with ITV. Can you help me out?
No, it does say on our auto signature that we're based at ITV. So people sort of join the dots, and then when you say, well, where do you work? I say we're at ITV. They're our really good affiliates. They're our mates. They're our business partners professionally, and they sort of understand. Oh, so you're a very similar product in Australia. And then once they sort of figure out what you are, and of course with the internet now, you can send them links to stories, and they can watch online, and which is fantastic. But most of them sort of like. I think when you ring up and say you're from Australia, and you sort of hear a bit of excitement from Australia, and you're ringing me about this news story, and it's kind of fun. I think they always get a little bit excited when they have a foreign crew along, and look, everywhere I've been, everyone's always shown me a good time, and it's been fantastic.
You're not just some crazy blogger that contacts people on Twitter and says, "Hey, can I interview you?"
I'll buy you a coffee.
That's right. It'll be fine. So, what's a normal day then for you? I mean, given the time difference, we're looking at filing for 5 o'clock news at the very least. Coming soon will be 10 breakfast. There's already 10 news that happens in the morning that you would be getting stuff prepared for. How does that roll out for you?
Well, it's I've only just sort of got into Brisbane, so I'm literally off the plane, so I'm still, adjusting my head, still working in London time. But well, it's this last year it's been a case of filing for 6 a.m. news, our 9 a.m. news, our morning news, 5 o'clock, and then we also had our 6:30 news at the start of the year. So it was pretty full on. They were long days, and they still are. So for me, trying to adjust how I go about it. So I'll get up of a morning, which is generally when the news has just gone to air. So if I'm not filing live reports, I get to sleep into about 6 a.m.
Oh, excellent.
on a lucky day, and then I'm up and at it. So I'm because I don't have a chief of staff or a newsroom behind me because of the time difference. So straight away I wake up every morning, and the BlackBerry's never more than this far away. So out of bed, BlackBerry, what's happening in the world? And then I'm straight into it. So I want to find out what the story is. I might have a story that's lined up, so I might be out shooting that. But generally, the last year it's been so busy, it's news of the day. So I wake up, something breaks, or I'm out shooting a feature story, something huge happens, and I'm straight onto that. But so pretty much gathering during the day as you normally would, and then when it's night time, so 7 p.m. at the moment is 6 a.m. in Australian time. So I generally try and watch the evening news, and a lot of the time we're turning the news around within half an hour of it going to air on the sort of flagship evening news in the UK. It's on the early news in Australia, and I really put a lot of effort into getting those stories up for the early news. I want people to wake up, turn on, and know that we've got the story. The biggest story in London or Europe is going to be on that bulletin, and that's what my big focus has been. But when the time zone isn't so good, and we were doing our 11 a.m. news, sort of midnight, is when I'm sitting in the chair doing a live cross for our breakfast, sort of our morning news program. There's been a few times where Ron Wilson's been in my ear, "Meso, wake up, wake up, look sprightly," and you sort of, wake up in the chair, and away you go. But and then, hopefully, if I'm organised, I'll have my 5 o'clock story and my evening news story in the can, and can sort of go back home from the studio. But sometimes when we had phone hacking, phone hacking was huge. I was filing live for every show and packages a lot of the time. So that rolled on for about, it's about 7 or 8 days, and we were actually carrying that story. When not a lot of other Australians were, before the News of the World shut down. We really saw the potential in the story, particularly when the phone hacking with Millie Dowler, those allegations came forward, and we were running that. So we'd already been on that story for a couple of days. Then the News of the World shut down, and that was just amazing. That was sort of 3 days non-stop. Then the inquiry, and of course we took that live as well, the fallout of all of that. So I got to the end of it, and I was so tired. I was ready for a holiday, and then something else popped up straight off the back of that, and we were off again. And it's just it's been last year, I think, for everyone, even in Australia. Watching the news back here, it's been a really big year. And I guess from my perspective, that's why I love what I do, because you don't know what's going to happen and what story's going to break and where you're going to go. But I hope this year I get a bit of time just to enjoy the Jubilee professionally and also the Olympics. It'd be nice to sort of hone in on London and tell those stories for a little while. But,
for sure. How do you like to relax? What do you do in the midst of all this?
I don't. I think this is the first week since I've had the job where I've relaxed. I don't have a BlackBerry. I've turned it off. I'm trying to turn it off. I turn it on. I sneak it on every now and then when the girlfriend's not looking, and sneak into the living room and turn it on and quickly clear it and turn it back off again and come back in as if I haven't been looking at it. But no, it's been good. I've just relaxed, switched off. I've only watched the news once, which for me is a big deal. A newspaper here or there, and just really being home in the sun is just fantastic. So I've switched off, stopped shaving, gone feral for a week, and loved it.
That's fair. It's a good opportunity, isn't it? Because you've been working hard for the past 12 months overseas, and now it's back into Australia to reconnect with colleagues, to have a break, to do all of that sort of stuff. How long are you hanging around being a bum?
Yeah, well, I've got a month, which is fantastic. So I've had a week so far, and I've just been out in central Queensland having a ball and relaxing, and now I'm in Brisbane. So I'm going up to the newsroom this afternoon to catch up with those guys, and there's journos there that I haven't met, and so that'll be nice to sort of catch up with all of those guys, and Kathy Schnitzeling, our Director of News, she's there, and fantastic. So I work for her in Brisbane and in Sydney, so it'd be good to see her. And I'm going down to Canberra, Melbourne, Sydney, and a few other places in between, just to mainly see people. I think that's what I've missed. Like, I've missed Australia, but I've missed my mates, so I'm trying to see as many of them as I can, and then I think by the end of it I'll be ready to go back and get stuck into it. I feel refreshed already. I just feel really relaxed, and it's just nice to be warm.
Well, it's pretty easy. That's right. It's been blizzard, cold conditions, and you've come over. Welcome to Queensland. We're having our hottest couple of weeks we've had all summer.
It's been fantastic. And my colleague Emma Dallymore, who's also from Brizzy, she is our US correspondent. So she's filling in for me in London, and so she's living in my flat. We sort of did the key change, and that's right. Here's my life. We'll do life swap for a month, and I spoke to her on the phone, and the poor thing's gone from Santa Monica, California, to the UK in February, which is pretty nasty. Yeah. And I woke up the other morning and caught a glimpse of something online about the snow, and so I'm sure Emma's doing it much tougher than I am back here in the sun at the moment. Sorry, Emma.
Yeah, but Emma's working, let's be fair.
Yeah, I'm sure she's having a very good time. It's hard not to in London.
That's exactly right. Mate, so at the top of the conversation, you talked about how you got into journalism and, basically annoying the local editor. It was legitimately, hey, give me a notepad and I'm off, and here I go. For those that are interested in wanting to get into journalism nowadays, it's a little bit of a different scenario. Given that there's not that many of those kind of opportunities. Yeah. What can people be doing? What would you say if they want to get in the face of an editor or a chief of staff or whatever?
Look, I think it's the same thing. I don't think you're trained to become a journalist. I think it's one of those things that you're born to do. You wake up every day and you want to know what's happening in the world or in your backyard, and then you want to tell people about it, and you want to be there, you want to see it, and you want to tell the story better than anyone else, and you want to tell it first, and you've got to have that passion, and you can't fake that. And I think that news directors, chiefs of staff, other journos, cameramen that you work with every day, they know when you've got it and when you haven't. And we had a work experience intern in Sydney. Yes. They come in every day. Every week you've got a new face coming into the newsroom, and one guy came in one day, and straight away everyone just knew this guy, he's got it, he's fantastic. He now works there as our weekend chief of staff, and I think if you're serious about it and you want to do it and you've got that passion, you can't hide that. You're going to be recognised. So if you really want to do it, you've got to prove how bad you want it, and sometimes that means writing stories, volunteering your time, learning from people. And at the time it's hard. People go, oh, I'm not getting an income, I'm not working, I don't have a job, I'm an intern, I want to be doing it now, I want to be reading the news now. And it's not going to happen. It doesn't happen. That's not how it works. It takes time. And part of that is, for me, I wish I had a bit more time when I was on that local paper to really fine-tune storytelling, the writing, the gathering, that whole process. So sometimes it's better not to be not to be going too fast. I think it's good to sort of really savour those early years where you're around people who, people like Mark Sulo, who really takes people under his wing in the Brisbane newsroom and sits down and says, this is how it works, listen to me. And it's important that you have that time and you have those mentors and people in your life. And I've been lucky to have those people, from Jim Baker on the old local paper that I started to the people that I work with now. And it's just my advice too is, if you ask for, seek advice and feedback, and don't be dismayed or upset or disheartened if it's critical. If someone says that wasn't particularly good, it'll happen to me, and it'll happen to every other journo, and it will happen to every journo before me and after me as well. It's the nature of the beast. Learn from people. You're going to make mistakes, and I guess just value the wise old souls that are around you in a newsroom, and you'll be fine. But it's really knocking on doors, shopping stories, and proving that you want to do it.
No, entirely fair. Look, given that you've been a career journalist and those sorts of things, does a degree make that much difference?
Well, I haven't got a degree. I went to uni, and I had to leave at the end of my first year, and I had a job that I went to, and our US correspondent, Daniel Sutton, doesn't have a degree either. He went straight in learning cadetships in radio, and he worked his way through to TV. I don't think it does. I think there's so many ways of getting to where you are. A lot of journos now might have worked in finance, they might have worked in real estate, they might have worked in politics, and they come across to it later in life, and sometimes they're the best journalists because they have a completely different outlook on life, a whole different set of skills and experience. And I don't think there's any sort of surefire, if you go to this university, get this degree, then you're going to get a job here, then you do. I don't think it matters. I think what matters is what happens when the red light goes on, or what happens when you sit in front of your computer and you have an hour to write some copy that needs to be on the front page. I think that's what ultimately you're judged by. But I mean, I loved uni, and I would have loved to have finished my degree, and it's always a little bit of a, so it's a good question. You sort of stuck a bit of a sore point for me, because I would have loved to have done it, but and I still am. I've been doing it by distance. It's been 9 years I've been working on my degree, so I'll get there eventually, but I don't think it matters. I think sometimes we put a bit too much emphasis on, the HSC and scores and numbers, when ultimately it's, you can have a certificate in bricklaying and not be able to put together a fence, and it's the same for us. If you can't tell a story and do it well, you're in the wrong job.
No, look, and that's entirely fair. I'm in a similar position to you, in that I did, of all things, a chemistry degree at uni. Started it and then finished at the end of my second year. When I don't want to live in a lab, that is not what I'm interested in. So you're right. I think there's those opportunities for people in media, and enough these days, particularly now that we have the ability to people can build up their own show reels and do their own pieces to camera and develop stories, and make that available on things like YouTube, and just go, oh, here I am, this is the stuff that I do.
This is me, and then within a day, people all around the world are consuming that. And the thing that I love now about social media and being online is that I can be sitting in my office in London, and someone on the other side of the world can see a story that I've put together, send me a message, retweet, send me information about a story, and it's fantastic. It's a great way of communicating. And when I started out a few years ago, you couldn't do that. So in terms of finding stories and then finding an audience to consume those stories, it's never been easier. You just don't know when you put something out there who's going to be able to see it, watch it, comment on it, share it with their friends. And actually, if you're passionate about something too, it's a good way to be able to, I don't know, citizen journalism is a big thing. It's a good way to actually influence people. I think it's really exciting, and I think that we need to get on board with the way in which we, the traditional evening news on the TV, that's not so much how people are consuming their television now. They want to know more. They want to know more about the people that are putting those stories together. They want to know more about the people that are presenting those stories, and we need to be accessible. And if you don't want to be, I don't know why you're doing our job. It's great. People sometimes say great story, sometimes they say bad story, or why did you do this, or what about that, and it's great. It's a two-way conversation, and it's nice because our medium is, by its nature, one way. We're telling people the news, and it's great for someone to be able to come over to you and say, yeah, I really like that story, what about this, have you thought about this? And I really enjoy that. It's fantastic. Great way to sort of self-critique as well when people are giving you their feedback. So I really enjoy getting a tweet, maybe not in the middle of the night when I'm sleeping, when the news is going to air after a long week, but I always write back, or I try to.
Yeah, thanks for waking me up.
That's right. No, I'm always very polite, even when I don't want to be.
And I can vouch for that, mate, so that's fair. Look, one last question. We look at the media in Australia, and for those that have lived in Australia, not travelled much or haven't paid much attention, we are very comfortable with the way that the news is packaged and delivered for us. We get used to formats, we watch 10 News because we enjoy the hour-long format, or we watch other news services because of the way they deliver and present the news. You being overseas and being exposed to a much broader delivery of news, ITV and other channels just in the UK alone, how does it measure up? Is what we're doing in Australia same? Do they do things differently that works better that would never work here, or vice versa?
For me, I'm a massive television nerd, so in my lounge room I have 3 TVs in the UK. So I've got the two plasmas that I'm watching, and then I have a work desk in the corner with my other monitor going. So I'm loving it because it's all live, it's all 24 hours, it's all rolling, so I can watch all those channels at once if I really want to. And for me, it's fantastic because you look at the different styles of storytelling, you look at the different styles of even shooting the story, because I'm trained in the camera and editing side of things as well. So I look at a lot of the graphics, and look, I think we do things differently here. But coming back and watching the news for the first time last night, because I don't actually get to see it. I never see any of my stories. I never see any of the bulletins. No, I haven't seen, except when I'm in the studio and I'm doing crosses, I can see a bit of it back. But in terms of sitting down watching the news,
watching it be broadcast,
I can't do it. So I've missed that. But I sat down last night and watched all the channels, watched all the news, watched the ABC, the works.
Saddest.
And I like Monday night on the ABC is my routine. So I was very excited last night.
It all returned last night, mate.
It did. I was there watching, and I thought that the news last night, no particular channel, but just the way in which it's done, it really is first class. It's punchy, it's got real pace about it. The UK, the stories are a lot longer, and there's a lot more commentary and analysis, which I think can slow the bulletins down. I watched last night and it had real pace, all the bulletins, lots of live content, lots of familiar faces, lots of camera work off the shoulder, good live crosses, good graphics. I mean, I like the format of our news in Australia. I think it works for us, but I do like in the UK that the stories are a bit longer, because quite often a lot of my job is our affiliates. I watch all of their shows, so ITV, and then I'm repackaging the news of the day that they're out gathering, and I'm gathering my elements and gluing it all together. And there's a lot more information in some of those longer stories. And I think for me, the challenge now is I'm used to, the average story on ITV is 2 minutes 45, 3 minutes.
Wow.
Here we're doing about 1 minute 20, 1 minute 30, and even during the London riots, I think my story might have been 3 minutes, and that's huge. That's a lot of time for me to sort of look at writing a 3-minute script, whereas in the UK they're doing it every day. I like the rolling format of the news in the UK, but it is a bit monotonous sometimes. I don't think Australia has that 24-hour need, but they're doing some really interesting stuff with social media. There was a court case recently where everyone was carrying a verdict in a case live, and of course no cameras in the courtroom, the same sort of situation we have here. So instead of having a reporter outside waiting to sort of get a text message from someone inside, they had made a graphic that was a tweet stream, so that actually had 3 journos in the courts and producers, made a tweet stream of them, and that was a sort of a locked off shot, and had a correspondent outside the court talking, obviously being fed information in his ear. But when it happened, the tweet appeared beside him with the guilty verdict, and it was just really a sense that this is live, we're here, it's happening. And I think that they're very good at doing that, providing live rolling coverage. I mean, during the riots, the broadcasters all really pitched in, so BBC, ITV, Sky News, all their choppers were buzzing around, all that vision was being shared. There were SNGs, news gathering satellites all through the city, but we're talking about comparing chalk and cheese in terms of budgets, in terms of consumption, so they're a very different beast. But I just think that the big things that I notice is a story length and the live coverage. I mean, in the UK, when big news breaks, it's live, it's wall to wall, there's correspondents everywhere, and and Australia's so big as well. I mean, how can you possibly prepare for live coverage of the Queensland floods if there's flooding or rioting in London? It's quite close, it's quite central, and the infrastructure's all there. Here, when a big story breaks, it could be Victorian bushfires in the middle of nowhere, Queensland floods, whatever it might be. They're big logistical challenges. You could have all the toys in the world, but you still got to put them in place and make it all work.
No, that's entirely fair. What do you use to edit?
What program? We use Avid, so that's the sort of standard that we use at TEN. So
something like that.
That's got a PC.
Yeah.
I like a MacBook. If you could talk to my boss and talk him into getting me a Mac, if you're listening, Mr. Molks. He's on the web. He knows how it all works.
I just asked a question. That's all.
No, I think you're onto something there.
Servant of the people. That's who I am, and a slave to the Apple.
Yeah. So it's just, I mean, for me, technologically, the way I run the bureau for me is that I can carry my life in 2 bags.
Yep.
So I have a backpack that I carry everywhere with me that has my laptop. If I've got my laptop, if I've got that backpack, I can pretty much do my job anywhere. It's got a little handy cam that I carry in there. I can go live from that laptop using a handy cam, so I can be sitting here talking to you and something could happen and we could be on air in a matter of five minutes or less. My camera is quite a small kit, so I have literally a carry-on size bag that fits my lighting kit, my editing kit is in there, my camera, my sound gear, everything can fit into that. My tripod I can break down into my clothes bag with my BGAN satellite, my clothes on top, and away I go. And I've literally carried 2 bags and walked across the border into Libya, I've walked across the border into Tunisia, I've gone to Egypt. We've broadcast from Tahrir Square using all of that gear.
That's a great travel budget they've got there, walking into Libya.
Well, there's no other way of getting in, mate. When it's kicking on, we literally carried, we were travelling, I was travelling with Hamish McDonald, we went into Libya together. He was reporting for the Negus show and I was reporting for news, but I was also filming and editing for the both of us. Yes. So we went in with the crew that we were travelling with, and we helped carry a satellite dish, an SNG, over the border illegally from Egypt into Libya, and people, it's a bit like with cars and things, there's a bit of envy in the news business, and I've got a little tiny camera. I've got sort of the Toyota Echo of cameras, and there's other networks that have got their fancy Ferraris and their Jaguars in the corner, and they're sort of looking at me, and it's kind of handy for those trips where you want to go in low key and
CNN turns up with their Hummer. Quite literally.
Yes, they do, and we're there, and I think it's more. We've really invested in technology, and it means that we have the capacity and to really carry everything that we need, and it's fantastic, and it's been great to experiment with that and fine-tune. We've put a lot of effort into testing all of that equipment, and Libya was a great example. We had no phones, we had no internet, we had no electricity a lot of the time, and everything we needed we had to carry, and we were able to do it. We were able to self-sustain for a week in a war zone and service 2 shows, and it was a good experience because you don't really have to do that in Australia. We've got the ability to manoeuvre our gear and get there, and I think the streaming, all that sort of technology will really improve because it's a much more efficient way. I mean, when we were in Tripoli and it fell, and so everyone was feeding live off the back of trucks using streaming technology and just capturing history, and it's unbelievable to think a few years ago that we really didn't have that technology available. Now, if you've got a laptop and a camera, you can go live around the world.
It's crazy, isn't it? The technology is developing how we deliver and see the news. We quite often see the packages that you guys delivered out of Libya, just thinking to them, and don't. We just sit in our lounge rooms and enjoy it and watch it and understand that there's a lot going down, but don't think about the level of effort to get you guys there, or the relatively meagre gear that you're delivering it off. Yet we still see such high quality picture, professionally edited packages, all of those sorts of things, and that's what's making news as compelling as it is today for us.
And also having to be versatile, and I think that's what TEN has always done really well. We're used to adapting when things go wrong or equipment breaks, and in Egypt, which was the taste test for Libya, I guess, in terms of preparing ourselves, we were losing our gear, we were being attacked and threatened, we couldn't film openly, so we were using whatever we could. We were sort of getting out of our hotel, and I was filming stories on my BlackBerry. And I found a good thing, if you're ever in a bind, your hands-free that you plug into a BlackBerry, that actually works as a microphone. So I sort of wonder if this does. So I was interviewing people on my BlackBerry and then emailing that into Sydney, and it was just unbelievable. And you just do whatever you have to take. And some days we were taking stills photos because we just couldn't get out of our hotel. We were doing live crosses off Skype. we were having to hide our gear, we were breaking up our kits and sort of trying to save what we could, and we all got out of there okay. But I guess that, not so much talking up the dangerous side of it, it was just more from a professional. For me, it was really rewarding to sort of be up against it every day. How are we going to do this? How are we going to get our vision out? How are we going to... Sometimes the big challenge is when you're at a story like that, you're in the story, but you don't actually know what's happening because you're holed up in your hotel or you're running around in Tahrir Square with all these protesters. So getting information in is sometimes just as crucial, because you sit down to write your story. What's Obama said on this today? Has Gillard spoken about this? What does it mean for Australia? What's happening at their protests in Australia? You don't know. So it's a really interesting feeling. I mean, I've never felt that position where I'm in a foreign country, not speaking the language, not having any real way of communicating, or at least not a reliable way. So the technology that you have is crucial for us to be able to do our job. You can have the best journalist in the world, the best cameraman in the world, and no way for them to get their story out. And of course now it's all about, you want to be first, you want to have the story on air, you want to have that vision out there before anyone else does, and that's another pressure as well. So sometimes you just get lucky, and other times not so lucky, but as long as you show up and have a go, that's what I think.
Mate, showing up and having a go is, I think, a massive understatement to the kinds of things, the kinds of stories we've seen you deliver just in the last 12 months, Brett. And look, thank you so much for your time. I'll let you finish off the coffee that you sat on for far too long. We've been enjoying your work on 10 years around Australia, and we look forward to more of it as we lead into a very big Olympic year.
I'm pumped. I'm ready to go. It's good to meet you finally.
Yeah, thanks, Brett.
Thanks,
Cheers.
Cheers, mate. Good one.